It was a warm summer evening when fate intervened and led me to meet the man who would become my husband, Mark. I was strolling along the sandy shore of a picturesque coastal town, enjoying the gentle breeze and the rhythmic sound of the waves. Little did I know that my life was about to take an extraordinary turn. As I walked along the shoreline, lost in my thoughts, I bumped into a tall, handsome stranger. Our eyes locked, and in that moment, time seemed to stand still. It was as if the universe had conspired to bring us together. "Hey, I'm sorry about that," the stranger said with a warm smile, his eyes twinkling with amusement. "No worries. I should have watched where I was going," I replied, feeling a rush of excitement. We struck up a conversation that flowed effortlessly, as if we had known each other for years. His name was Mark, and he had a charming charisma that instantly captivated me. We spent the entire evening walking along the beach, talking about our dreams, passions, and everything in between. Days turned into weeks, and our connection grew stronger with each passing moment. Mark shared his dreams of building a successful career, while I spoke of my aspirations as a writer. We discovered a shared love for adventure, travel, and a desire to create a beautiful life together. Before long, we decided to take the leap and commit to a lifetime of love and companionship. Our wedding day was nothing short of a fairy tale. Surrounded by friends and family, we exchanged vows, promising to support and cherish each other through thick and thin. As we settled into our new life, Mark's ambition and dedication to his career became evident. He worked tirelessly, often bringing his work home with him. But despite the demands of his job, he always made an effort to prioritize our time together. "Emma, you are my anchor," he would say, his eyes filled with love. "No matter what happens, you are my constant source of strength and inspiration." And for a while, life was truly perfect. We purchased a beautiful house, nested in a charming neighborhood, where we envisioned raising a family one day. Our careers flourished, and we reveled in the joy of newfound financial stability. The idyllic days of our perfect beginning slowly started to fade, replaced by a growing sense of unease and uncertainty. At first, the changes in Mark's behavior were subtle. He began coming home late, offering explanations that seemed reasonable enough. "Sorry, Emma," he would say with a tired smile. "Work has been incredibly demanding lately, but it'll get better, I promise." I reassured myself that it was just a phase, believing that the stress of his career was taking its toll. I longed for the days when he would walk through the door with a wide grin, ready to share stories of his day. But as the days turned into weeks, the cracks in our relationship began to deepen. Mark's once charming personality started to erode, replaced by irritability and impatience. He became easily agitated over trivial matters, snapping at me without cause. One evening, as I set the dinner table, I accidentally knocked over a glass of water. The shattering sound echoed through the room, and I braced myself for Mark's reaction. "What's wrong with you, Emma? Can't you do anything right?" He lashed out, his words laced with anger. Stunned and hurt, I tried to explain that it was an accident, but my voice trembled with a mixture of fear and sadness. The atmosphere in our once loving home had become tense and strained, leaving me bewildered and desperate for answers. As the weeks passed, I found myself walking on eggshells, afraid of setting off Mark's volatile temper. His moods oscillated between distant silence and explosive outbursts, leaving me constantly on edge. In the midst of this emotional turmoil, I sought solace in the company of my closest friends. One evening over a cup of coffee, I confided in my best friend, Sarah. "Emma, this isn't healthy," Sarah said, concern etched across her face. "You deserve better than this. Have you talked to Mark about his behavior?" Tears welled up in my eyes as I recounted the instances of Mark's outbursts. Sarah listened attentively, her supportive presence giving me the courage to confront the mounting problems in my marriage. "You need to communicate your feelings to Mark," she advised gently. "A strong relationship is built on trust, openness, and understanding. If he truly loves you, he'll be willing to work through this." With Sarah's words echoing in my mind, I mustered the courage to have an honest conversation with Mark. Little did I know that this conversation would be a turning point, revealing the true depths of our relationship's deterioration. As days turned into weeks, Mark's behavior continued its downward spiral, plunging our once loving home into a darkness I never could have imagined. The irritability that once punctuated his words transformed into something far more sinister: harassment and abuse. It began with cutting remarks and belittling comments that chipped away at my self-worth. "You're so useless, Emma," he would sneer. "I can't believe I married someone like you." At first, I thought it was a manifestation of his stress, a release of pent-up frustration. I desperately clung to the belief that the man I loved would return, that this nightmare would end. But the nightmare persisted, escalating from verbal abuse to physical aggression. He would shove me against walls, leaving bruises that painted my skin in shades of purple and blue. The once safe haven of our home became a battleground where I fought to preserve my sanity and physical well-being. Fear wrapped its icy tendrils around my heart, making every step I took in his presence a precarious one. I walked on eggshells, attempting to avoid the landmines of his volatile temper. My mind became a constant swirl of confusion and desperation, yearning for the return of the man I had fallen in love with. One particularly gloomy evening, as I prepared dinner, the tension in the air was palpable. Mark had been distant and brooding all day, a storm brewing behind his eyes. I mustered the courage to confront him. "Mark, we need to talk," I said, my voice quivering but resolute. "I can't live like this anymore. This isn't the person I fell in love with. Please, tell me what's going on." He turned to face me, his eyes ablaze with anger. "You think I'm the problem. You're the one who's always nagging, always complaining. I'm tired of your constant whining," he spat, his voice dripping with venom. Tears streamed down my face as I realized that the man I had once adored had become a stranger. A monster lurking beneath the facade of the perfect beginning we once shared. The abuse persisted for what felt like an eternity. I felt trapped, suffocated by the weight of his oppressive behavior. The isolation deepened as I withdrew from friends and family, ashamed of the secret I carried within me. But the human spirit is resilient, and a flicker of strength ignited within me. One fateful night, Mark didn't come home. In that moment, a decision crystallized in my mind. I had had enough. With trembling hands, I packed my belongings, leaving behind the remnants of a shattered dream. As I closed the door behind me, a mix of fear and liberation coursed through my veins. It was the first step towards reclaiming my life, a life that had been overshadowed by fear and abuse. As I settled into my small rented apartment, the weight of the past slowly began to lift. The emptiness of the space felt both daunting and liberating, for it represented a blank canvas on which I could rebuild my life. With each passing day, I discovered a newfound sense of independence. The walls of my apartment became a sanctuary, shielding me from the horrors I had endured. I started to reclaim my identity, rediscovering the woman I had lost in the midst of the turmoil. Gone were the days of walking on eggshells, of fearing the unpredictable shifts in Mark's temperament. Now I had control over my own destiny. The notion of revenge began to take hold, a burning desire to reclaim my power and ensure that justice prevailed. One morning, as I sipped my coffee, a thought crystallized in my mind. I decided to seek legal counsel to explore my options. I needed to ensure that the scars left by Mark's abuse would not define my future. A month had passed since I had left the toxic environment behind and embarked on a journey of self-discovery and empowerment. I had settled into my new apartment, relishing the peace and freedom that enveloped me. But amidst the newfound serenity, a lingering desire for justice remained. One ordinary evening, as I sat engrossed in a book, the shrill ring of the phone startled me. I hesitated for a moment, contemplating whether to answer, but curiosity got the better of me. "Hello," I said tentatively, not recognizing the number on the caller ID. "Where are you?" Mark's voice pierced through the receiver, his tone a mixture of anger and confusion. A jolt of adrenaline surged through me, realizing that he had finally noticed my absence. A faint smile tugged at the corners of my lips as I seized the opportunity to assert my newfound strength. "Haven't you noticed? I've been gone from your house for a month now, and I'm living alone," I replied, my voice steady and resolute. Silence hung in the air, the weight of my words sinking into the depths of Mark's consciousness. I could almost picture the shock and realization washing over him. "You can't just leave like that," he bellowed, his voice laced with disbelief. But his words fell on deaf ears. I had escaped the clutches of his abuse, and no amount of his anger could dampen my spirit. I had found the courage to take back control of my life, and I was determined to hold on to it tightly. A pause followed as Mark struggled to comprehend the irreversible change that had occurred. His arrogance had been stripped away, leaving him exposed and vulnerable. In a moment of desperation, he finally confessed, "I've run out of all my money. I can't pay off the house." His admission sent a surge of satisfaction through me. The tables had turned, and the consequences of his actions were starting to unfold. But this was not the end of the story, for I had a proposition of my own. With a calm and measured voice, I replied, "I'll buy the house from you and live in it, but we will get divorced." Fury erupted from Mark's end of the line. He unleashed a torrent of expletives and insults, his anger masking the reality of his desperate situation. But deep down, he knew he had no other choice. After what felt like an eternity, his voice wavered, defeated. "Fine. Do whatever you want. Just leave me alone." And with those words, the realization struck me. I had won. I had reclaimed my power and secured a future free from the torment that had plagued me for far too long. With the decision to buy the house from Mark and proceed with the divorce, I set the wheels in motion to secure my independence once and for all. The lingering taste of victory fueled my determination as I navigated the legal process with unwavering resolve. Meetings with my attorney, Laura, became more frequent as we strategized the best approach to protect my rights and ensure a fair resolution. The weight of Mark's betrayal and abuse fueled my fight for justice. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months as the legal battle played out. Mark's initial resistance and refusal to accept the reality of our situation slowly eroded in the face of mounting evidence. He was confronted with the consequences of his actions. During one particularly tense meeting, where negotiations reached a crucial juncture, Mark's facade of confidence began to crumble. His arrogance gave way to vulnerability as the stark reality of his financial predicament sank in. "I won't let you take everything from me," he shouted, his voice trembling with a mix of desperation and anger. Laura maintained her composed demeanor, countering his outburst with unwavering professionalism. "Mark, the evidence is clear. The abuse you inflicted and the financial mismanagement have consequences. It's time to accept the reality of the situation and find a resolution that allows both parties to move forward." Mark's face contorted with rage, but deep down, he knew that the tides had turned. He had squandered his chances at reconciliation, and the consequences were now unavoidable. Days later, in a small courtroom, the divorce proceedings reached their culmination. The judge, impartial yet empathetic, listened attentively as both parties presented their cases. The truth behind Mark's abuse and financial misconduct was laid bare for all to see. With each passing moment, the gravity of his actions weighed heavily upon him. His once confident demeanor crumbled, replaced by a humbled realization of the devastation he had caused. The judge's final decree echoed through the courtroom, marking the end of a chapter stained by abuse and manipulation. It was a bittersweet victory, as I had fought for my freedom and justice, but the scars of the past still lingered. Outside the courtroom, as the reality of the divorce settled in, Mark approached me with a mix of defiance and resignation. "I hope you're happy now," he sneered, attempting to regain control even in the face of defeat. I met his gaze with unwavering resolve, the newfound strength radiating from within. Happiness isn't derived from the pain and suffering of others, Mark. I'm reclaiming my life and moving forward. It's time for both of us to find our own paths." As those words hung in the air, a sense of finality settled upon us. The tables had turned, and I had emerged victorious, not through revenge, but through my unwavering determination to break free from the cycle of abuse. With the divorce settlement behind me, I stood at a crossroads, armed with a newfound sense of empowerment and a burning desire to leave the past firmly in the rearview mirror. The first step towards my revenge was to secure a place I could call my own, a sanctuary that would be a testament to my strength and resilience. I delved into the real estate market, determined to find the perfect apartment that would become my haven of independence. After countless viewings and meticulous considerations, I finally found the ideal space. A beautiful apartment that exuded the promise of a brighter future. The moment I signed the lease, I felt a surge of satisfaction. It was a symbol of my triumph, a declaration that I had severed the ties that had bound me to a life of pain and misery. The apartment became a blank canvas on which I would paint my new beginning. But there was still unfinished business to attend to. The house that had once been a symbol of our shared dreams, now a painful reminder of the abuse I had endured. It was time to ensure that the tables turned completely, that Mark would face the consequences of his actions. I reached out to Laura, my unwavering ally throughout the legal battles, to discuss my plan. Together, we devised a strategy to buy the house from Mark, using the financial settlement as a means to take full ownership and sever any remaining ties. Days turned into weeks as negotiations unfolded. Mark's desperation was palpable as he struggled to accept the reality of his financial downfall, but this time I held the upper hand. One fateful day, as we met to finalize the transfer of the house, emotions ran high. Mark's face contorted with anger and resentment, his pride wounded by the loss of what was once his home. "You can't do this, Emma. This is my house," he shouted, his voice filled with frustration. I looked him squarely in the eyes, the fire of determination burning brightly within me. "Mark, this house is no longer yours. It's time for you to face the consequences of your actions. I will buy it, and you will have no claim to it. It's time for both of us to move on." With each word, the realization sank deeper into Mark's consciousness. The control he had once wielded over me had dissipated entirely. The tables had turned, and he was left to confront the ruins of his own making. As I signed the paperwork, the house became a symbol of my triumph. It was no longer a place of pain, but a testament to my resilience and the strength I had found within myself. Mark, on the other hand, was left with the bitter taste of defeat. With the house firmly in my possession, I stood at the threshold, ready to step into a future free from his shadow. With a deep breath, I turned the key and crossed the threshold of my new home, leaving behind the remnants of the past. "Goodbye, Mark," I whispered to the empty house. "You no longer hold power over me.